Gentlemen, welcome. We have Jeff Hittner with us today. Jeff is a really cool guy, lives in Valencia, Spain now, which is, of course, beautiful. We've got lots of information we're going to get about how he ended up there. Jeff runs the Ambitious Dads Initiative. He's on a mission to interview up to 100 and more dads who are ambitious, who want to do things, who want to make things for their wife, for their kids, for their family, so that we can learn from them. But we're going to turn the tables on Jeff today, and we're going to interview him, and we're going to learn about where he got, how he got where he's going, and everything about you, and get some pretty good nuggets about how we can all improve at the same time. So, Jeff, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Ryan. I really appreciate it. I love talking about all things dad.
Absolutely. Well, let's just jump into some of these questions real quick, and we're going to dive into your story a little bit more. But Jeff, as we said, you've interviewed a lot of dads. You've seen a lot of things. You're kind of up on what's the challenge that dads are facing right now. What's the thread in these interviews that you've been going through between these dads that are the biggest challenges that we as fathers are facing in today's day and age?
You know, I've now interviewed almost 200 dads, actually, and there's about half a dozen big, what I call gaps. And these gaps become pretty obvious when you think about them. The first one is the time gap. Like, you know, we have no time. We are trying to do so much. For me, ambitious is broader than just family. It's like you're ambitious maybe in your career and how you want to raise your kids and truly co-parent, and you're focused on your own personal wellness, or you're not focused on it enough, or you're trying to maintain a relationship with a partner while trying to do these 10 other things. You know, we all know, like, work-life balance, the time management, it's the biggest one. It comes up all the time. That's the biggest gap. I call it the time gap. The second one is what I call the confidence gap. So the confidence gap is, there's real data out there that says that, you know, more than ever before, men say that their primary identity is being a dad, right? And for all of us men that say that's our primary identity, only about a third of us think we're doing an okay job at it. That's a huge confidence gap. So that's what I call the second one. The third one is sort of like the brotherhood gap, where how many people are we actually in conversation with in our day-to-day lives that are dads, that we're actually swapping stories and fears and challenges with? There are too few of us doing that. So that's the next gap. Then the fourth gap is the co-parenting gap. I mean, we all, I'm sure you can fill in the gap, pun intended, of what that could mean for you. But generally speaking, the co-parenting gap is often around like misaligned expectations. More than 70% of us in the US are married to people from a different cultural background. But even if we're not, like, we are all raised with our own experience of what parenthood should be like, and we don't actually pause to see how distinct that is from our partners, and what a few basic conversations could do to help align in ways that are really just a question of misunderstanding and not knowing each other's histories. Then there's the role model gap, because a lot of us don't have dads from our own life experience that were as involved or want to be as involved as we do, like as modern dads right now. And then finally, what I call kind of like the legacy gap. And for me, the legacy gap is really like actually having a philosophy around like what it means to be a good parent and how you're going to do it. We're just winging it, even though we really care about it. And so that's the sixth gap. And all of those come from, like, you know, almost 200 interviews and really seeing what was coming up repetitively in terms of the challenges that we were having.
I can't imagine anybody else is doing what you're doing to get this, you know, profound amount of data straight from the horse's mouth, as it were, to be able to dial this in. You know, we all use AI these days. I'm using, you know, Grok and ChatGPT, and you can always try to find these things, but to get that real distilled presence and focus with those six things is pretty impressive. And as you can obviously see, those are all links in a chain as you look at those. And I think the time one that you alluded to first, you know, I know all of us feel it. Every dad that's here, we have the burden on our shoulders of making sure there's a roof over our heads, that there's food on the table if we're the breadwinner for the house, and trying to put our kids to bed, have time with our wife, wake up in the morning, and you do it all over again. And that can become so monotonous, and it can become, very challenging to stay motivated with that. So then that ties into all the other 5 things that you mentioned, Jeff. And that can really cause some challenges for dads to stay motivated, it would seem.
Not just to stay motivated, but to have any space in their life to do these things. And that's what, and as you're saying, they're all connected, because then it leads to less and less confidence. Like, I can't do anything. Like, I'm being pulled in so many directions. Am I even being present when I'm there, right? And it adds all these existential questions to what you're trying to figure out as a parent. And then, of course, there's just not a lot of dad-focused research on it. And there's this statistic that really hit hard when I was doing my research, and it was something like the U.S. has spent over the last 3 or 4 decades more than 10 billion with a B on research around motherhood. Can you guess the amount we've spent on research around fatherhood?
Maybe 1% of that, if that.
Yeah, it's closer to 15 or 16 million.
Yeah.
Right? And I get it. We've evolved quickly, right? The role that we want to play has changed a lot. But I mean, that's a huge issue right there. We don't know what we don't know. We're only now, for instance, beginning to discover that our biology changes when we have kids, not just our spouses. And
100%.
if we aren't actually there, the first several months, we can miss some of those biological changes, which are really critical to bonding with our kids and growing more empathy and all sorts of great things. So we need this type of research. We need this type of focus. And I love doing it.
That's right. And Jeff, it just, bolsters the effort that you're doing, the effort that you and I are doing right now, right? Talking to dads. The more we have these conversations, the better. I actually just saw something, one of my friends, we call it our No-Code Gentlemen's Society, Jeff, and it kind of goes to the tribe discussion that you've alluded to as well, right? Have a group of guys that weren't your drinking buddies in college, guys that are one step ahead of you, hopefully from a professional perspective, have kids, are trying to push forward. So we've got our core group of about 7 or 8 of us. But Timo on our team, who we're on this group that I've done a couple of podcasts with, he sent this out just the other day, basically saying, right, I'm not sure if that's backwards. Oh, it is backwards for you. But basically what it says is this is why the children are happier, because dad is sitting there on the park bench thinking about the next car, the next trip, the financial challenges he has, while the kid is just sitting there excited to be sitting with dad, right? This broke my heart, Jeff, because I do my best, and we all do our best to do what we can for our kids, but we often just get lost in our thoughts of the challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis, and we forget about this beautiful human being that is just looking up at us, at his or her hero. Man, it really reminds you.
Yeah, and it's not that women don't have as many, if not more, thoughts running through their head about parenting, but they have spent more time figuring out how to engage with one another around it, right? They talk about when it's not working and what's feeling difficult, and they, and they really have created the culture that it's okay to do that together, and it should always be okay to do that together. And if we could do that just a little bit more and feel like we're not alone, it makes the biggest difference. My work is entirely selfish as well. I mean, I have learned so much, and it has helped me become a better dad in so many ways. But there's so many simple little examples. I remember, I have 2 boys. They are 8 and 5, and they are the absolute lights of my life. And they fight with each other. They are boys. And I thought to myself, what on earth am I doing wrong? Doesn't matter how much I teach them values or to be good kids, and I think they're great kids, but they're always fighting. And I didn't have a boy sibling growing up. I have a younger sister. And so I didn't know that this is just par for the course. And finally, when I was interviewing these dads, I started asking this question, and they were like, "Oh my God, all I ever did was fight with my brother, and I love him to death. You know, we're both adults now,
Yeah.
and da 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 da." And I was like, "That's it. Like that's all I needed. I just needed to know that I wasn't alone in that, and it was so helpful."
Yeah, so we have three kids, 9, 6-year-old boys, and then our daughter Allegra is 4. And same thing, Jeff. And what's interesting is they were tooth and nail all against each other up until pretty much this summer. And I think changing, temperature, and they're actually starting now that they're just a year older than your kiddos, 6 and 9. I'm starting to see a little bit of that gelling. When I would just sit both of them down, like, you are brothers. You're all you have in your entire life is family. Stop yelling at each other. So that's good to hear that everybody else is in the same boat too, because it's tough.
Yeah.
Well, let's dive a little bit deeper into you, Jeff, if we can. So your wife, Grace, you two, as you said, you have 2 sons, Rivington and Remiel, correct?
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about your story when CV-19 was coming through, and I had our kiddo during that time as well, and you decided, all right, listen, I'm done with this situation. You up and moved to Spain, and you made some pretty big changes in your life. What kind of precipitated that, and how has it started to turn out for you?
Yeah, so our youngest was born during the worst of the lockdown at the start of 2020, and in New York City, where I had been living for 20 years, which was also like just the worst hit part of the U.S. And I mean, if you can imagine, like my wife was probably 8.5 months pregnant. I remember, we're all locked in the house, and no longer could we see the doctor for the checkups before like her birth. We had to buy online like our own heart monitoring thing for the baby. Like it was crazy. And I remember getting this mass text over over text that like my wife got and I got, that was literally like, it was from the city of New York, and it said, "If anyone has any medical training whatsoever, please report to the nearest hospital." And like, you're receiving this, and you need to be in the hospital in a couple of weeks, and you have like no idea, what's going on. This is early pandemic. And so that was stressful. It all worked out. We have, 2 beautiful, healthy boys, but it became pretty obvious that, at least, in the context of having a brand new family, we were not going to stay in the city, but we couldn't get excited about the suburbs. We're kind of urban folks. And our next door neighbors, who literally shared a wall with us, were from Spain, but they had been here 13 years. They had become U.S. citizens. They had 2 children that were each about 2 years older than our kids. And the wife was like the head of infectious disease at Columbia University. And she was like, "Jeff, we are out of here. We are moving back to Spain. You guys should come." And she said it, and it was like kind of a joke, and we all kind of laughed. And then I remember like it just started sinking into my head, being like, yeah, like that sounds cool and different. And also, you couldn't go to Europe because it had closed down. You could only go if you had a visa. And so I was like, oh, it's even more challenging. This sounds great. And so it just became like the thing to focus on that made getting through some of the tougher aspects of like having a brand new second baby that you couldn't share with anyone. Like there were no family would come. Like very few friends were like able to see him, and this made it was exciting and different, and so we made it happen. And I have a blog where I publish a lot of like the research and the thoughts that I have around ambitious dads, and I wrote an article there called "I Moved to Spain to Be a Better Dad." And it couldn't be more true, because here there's space. And when I say space, I mean like, school ends at 5, just like work does in theory, right? Like it doesn't end at 2. You don't have to come up with a babysitter and 10 extracurricular activities. Like it's all built into school. Family life is just more central to how everything is here. And I like have before my youngest, he's now in preschool, but I could spend the mornings with him because I was working virtually, and like that work started in the afternoon. So I had like 2 days in one. And I just really felt that I could be more present. And I think a lot of the hustle that was required in the US just to stay above water, like, doesn't feel as necessary here for a whole host of reasons. But it just like every little bit helps, right? Because our energy is so like is utilized fully every day, right, as dads, because we're trying to balance so many things. So one or two fewer things that you have, or a little bit more space that you have in your day, makes a big impact on some of the gaps that we talked about: time, confidence, like all of those things. So that's how we ended up here, and it was supposed to be 1 year, and it's been several more.
I mean, just to quickly follow up on that, I mean, obviously that's a dream for many, many people. Let's just go to Valencia, Spain, and leave all this hustle behind. Just from a logistical, financial, family perspective, what were some of the, base challenges to be able to finally make that decision, pull that trigger, and move?
Well, one, you have a new child. He doesn't even have a passport, and everything's closed down. So how do you get a passport, right? Like it took almost, and our whole life happened in New York. So like everything in particular was closed down there. So it took months and months and months to get through the processes that were required to move, and that took some extra patience. But it also made it like made me even more determined. But I mean, I think the other big thing was it would have been a lot harder to move if like we weren't as cut off from friends and family, which everyone was in 2020, right? So if it was like random 2025 and it was like, okay, should we move for a year? And it's like all the people that we just saw in the last week we won't see again for a year, whereas in 2020 we hadn't seen them for a year because we didn't end up moving towards until the end of the year. So I think it was just a confluence of kind of perfect timing on all of that. And now our children are thriving here. So it's a beautiful place to raise them.
Yep. Bilingual, you're catching up.
Fully.
One of the quotes that you have out there is, you move forward, you're in Valencia, you're settled in, and now you're starting to kind of see the importance of fatherhood. And what you said is, fatherhood cracked me open in ways I never expected and showed me how unprepared most of us are for the emotional work it demands. After learning I couldn't be a biological father, which I'm curious about, I wrestled early with the fear that I might screw up my kids before they even existed. I feel a feeling every dad in one way or another eventually comes to know. The Ambitious Dad Project is where we stop winging it and start talking. So how many dads are forced to just wing it out there? And kind of how did you come to this realization that this is your new calling once you got settled in?
Well, I say that I'm a dad of intention, right? And you said it in that quote. So I couldn't become a dad biologically, and when I found that out, that was the thing. I wanted to be a dad my whole life, and so I had to find something as foundational as what fatherhood meant to me, which is quite a transformation, or at least it was for me. And getting through that transformation did many things for me. One, it really solidified the work I do as a leadership expert and as an executive coach. Because if I can transform my mindset around something as foundational as fatherhood, then we can transform our mindset around anything. But the other thing it did, as I just said, is like it made me a dad of intention. I mean, I am a dad to two amazing boys, and the harder something is, often we become more focused and more committed to it. And but the problem is like I felt like what I should be good at didn't necessarily come naturally, and that was like the emotional part. And that's because like when you when your kids are young and developing and having their tantrums and going through all their emotional things, they trigger us in ways that we didn't really know that we had triggers, or weaknesses that we didn't know we had emotionally, and we do, and I do. And so, my wife could sit through a 20-minute temper tantrum, but I could get through 2 minutes, and afterwards I became dysregulated, and it was really hard for me, and I had to understand where that came from. I had to understand how I could improve it, and it's not like it improved overnight. It was, the next step was I could get to 4 minutes, and then I would tell my wife, look, I'm going to time out now, because after this, I'm not going to be useful for him or for me or for us. And her being okay with that, and until I could get to that place where I understood that my overreaction or my feelings that were brought up when he was having that temper tantrum are not connected with him. They might be connected to any number of things. And for any of us, it could be that I wasn't allowed to share that sort of emotional outburst when I was his age, or I always, well, that's what it was for me, at least. And so learning and developing and becoming better emotionally with my own stuff has made me a better dad. And I think that, one of the things I also do is I do therapy. I think our kids, whatever their challenges are, unless they're chemical, are probably inherited through the way we engage with them. And so if we can improve who we are and how we manage ourselves, then we're doing a service to our children as well. And so, so I have a therapist that I see every week, and it's awesome. And I feel like I am a better dad.
So that led to the Ambitious Dad Project initiative. What's your goals? What's the end state, or I guess the progression state, for this initiative as you continue to grow?
It's building a really big community around this. I've launched several programs, which the pilots have had great success. The sort of the cornerstone one is called the Founding Fathers Program. So it's a 10-week program for dads that basically want to build their fatherhood philosophy, right? What are your values as a family, as a dad? What does it mean to you to be a great dad? What are your strengths as a family? What are you going to lean into? What are the traditions you want to build? It means a whole host of things. And it's a lot of the things that might be swirling around in our head that we don't actually ever put process or paper down towards. And it's the simpler way to put it is, if you work in business, you have a mission statement, a vision statement, you have a 3-year plan, you have goals for the year. You should have that as a dad too. And that includes all the things you want to learn and how you want to grow, what your role should be as a dad for the next 12 months or 18 months as your kids moves from one developmental stage to the next. So this program is designed to help dads with that, to build community. We do a lot of work, obviously, in small groups, and just to really grow and feel connected. And so, I'm launching another one in September if people are interested. And then I have a very more small group coaching program for dads that want to feel integrated. So, and rather than feeling like they're two separate people, one person at work and one at home, it's how to really be aligned and integrated across both. Because our leadership, the way we manage, the way we work should be the same, because we don't have the energy for it to be any different, and we're going to be way more authentic when it is aligned. So those are some things that I want to continue to grow and build, and I've launched a podcast, which I'm super excited about, the Ambitious Dads Podcast. I would say my ultimate dream would be that we would have an in-person gathering every year with lots of programming and training and also stuff for the whole family, and maybe it's in Valencia. That would be cool.
Got me in for that. Yeah, it's interesting, Jeff. I mean, when you look at, I kind of put dads into three buckets, right? So you've got one bucket over here, which is the engaged in wanting to improve dad, who's there, who's already your ideal person that you want to communicate and engage with. You've got the present, but not really dad, right? Who goes to work, wife does all the effort raising the kids. He's there, but he's not looking for a podcast nor listening to us right now. And then you've got the absent dad, who you and I'm sure, fully acknowledge is a big problem, but we can't really address in particular with this. How do you get that middle group to kind of start to see, like that GIF that or that photo that I showed you earlier, that this really is important, and you've got 18 seasons left with your kiddos, and if you wake up in 20 years and your kid doesn't want to talk to you, it's going to be devastating. How do we get that middle guy to join our cause?
I have to be honest, they're not the focus of my work, because as someone who literally makes a job helping people with change, like making change in their life, I know that you can only make change for people who raise their hands, right? Like, they have to raise their hands. They have to recognize that that's what they want, and like ask themselves the question, like, am I comfortable like continuing down this path, or is there another path that I really need to do for me and for my family? But if they're not there looking, and they're not trying to, I don't know that we're going to reach them. I think what will happen is maybe they'll see, dads acting differently at a sports game, or at school, or maybe, hopefully, like, because there are so many more modern dads like us, they'll be talking more about fatherhood in some group setting, maybe even a work setting, and that can start to spill over and have an impact. And maybe their wives are also talking about it, or their partners. So I think there's hope, because change is already happening. But I don't think additional marketing is going to do it. I think they need to feel something inside. And I do think a lot of them do. But I also think it's fair that there are plenty of men that still define providing as financial. The people I work with, the men I work with, do not. For them, providing means something much broader than that. It means nurturing. It means, it may mean financial. It may only mean nurturing. It may mean both. It can mean so many more things than the traditional definition. And that's important to recognize.
Agree. It's a shame, but I agree. It's one of those things, we can only focus on so much. So one of the things that I've tried to do, I mentioned briefly our no-code gentleman society. And I think those are one of those things too, right? If you can get your group together and then just slowly but surely and subtly provide some of that reinforcement as to why it is important to potentially look that way, maybe we can bring them over. I appreciate that, though. You've been an entrepreneur since 5 years old, Jeff. You've been doing all kinds of fun stuff, selling things in the neighborhood. You're an entrepreneur in a number of fronts yourself. For a dad who's looking to, maybe break that W-2, any guidance, any advice in terms of how to kind of level up from a entrepreneurial or leadership or professional perspective?
I have lots of thoughts. Let me think. First and foremost, I hate the expression side hustle. It's the last thing you need when you've got very little time on your hands and you're trying to manage your family. So, starting a business totally works, but you have to recognize that it's not like the Facebook story, or the story of I'm going to start something, I'm going to raise some funds, and it's going to go quick. I have started numerous businesses that have failed, numerous, and they failed because they made no money. And I was lucky enough to have a very patient wife who had an entrepreneur for a dad. And who also had a job that was much more consistent than mine. that had a big impact. So I was able to chase my dreams of building things and growing things where I saw needs and gaps, as opposed to like primarily where I saw money first. But having said that, like there are plenty of ways to begin that exploration, but it starts with understanding like the truth of what being an entrepreneur is. And the truth of it is there's a ton of uncertainty, there's a ton of failure, and you can't bet the farm on like a new income stream in 12 months that will enable you to quit your day job. And then if that's true, but you also realize if you do it as a side hustle, you're taking away from your kids, like there's a lot of challenge there. So it's just, and I'm not trying to discourage, I just want people to understand everything has trade-offs. So I do decide my day. Also, my income fluctuates like astronomically from year to year. And I've gotten used to that and I manage for that. But there's not always certainty. But as you can tell, as someone who moved to Spain with 2 kids, one of them being a baby, like uncertainty is okay for me. If it's not okay for you, then it's a little bit harder.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with the W-2. I mean, I guess that's a good point to start with. And we all have knowledge. There's always somebody 5 years behind us, Jeff, who we have the guidance, the knowledge that could be beneficial to them, and just start talking about it. Start the podcast like you did. Start the YouTube channel like I've got. If you can help 1 or 2 people, that's beneficial. And then maybe as it continues to grow, it can turn into a business. But I'm with you. I've tried and failed multiple times to get that business started. So you just kind of got to be patient and continue the effort to see where it takes you.
And know why you're doing what you're doing, right? Like, what's your definition of success? What are your trade-offs? Because there are success stories, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a few more questions for you. I think these are the most important ones as we go. Before that, you've kind of already alluded to it and mentioned, but where, Jeff Hittner, can people find you, learn more about you? Yeah,
so depending on when this airs, the website will be fully up, ambitiousdads.com. That's the best place for you to find everything. My blog, which sits on Substack right now, but you'll be able to find it through ambitiousdads.com, or you can just go to my name, jeffhittner.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, but mainly on ambitiousdads.com.
If you got an ambitious dad that wants to jump on your podcast and tell a story, they do that.
Oh my God, please. I would love that. So like the podcast is called the Ambitious Dad Podcast. Did you recognize the theme? And so, yeah, just send me a note. You'll be able to contact me through the website. I would love, like, I'm always looking for dads to talk to. And by the way, my podcast is not about like, hey, I have done it all. I have succeeded in my career and as a dad. It is about all those gaps that we talked about. It is about like recognizing the challenges as well as talking about some of the things that are working well in our parenting. But it's never about like, hey, because there's some podcasts that I noticed that it's like, hey, I'm going to have this person who is like the founder of a unicorn company and is a dad, and he's going to talk about all the way dads now, like how he dads, if that's a verb, now. And it's like, well, you don't have the same concerns as the rest of us, right? Like you're not balancing the financial stuff. So this is meant to be more connected to all of these gaps that we're trying to manage.
In commiserating in the challenges we face instead of just seeing somebody who's high in the sky, I think is more beneficial. All right, this guy's going through
role models don't mean that someone's doing it perfectly. It means that there's someone else that is parenting in the way that like you would like to get to, or is like somehow navigating career and family in a way that seems appropriate and connected to what you would like to do. There's no perfection in fatherhood. In fact, I've never failed more.
Yeah. Or has two boys that's never stopped fighting. How do we fix that problem?
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
One of the questions, Jeff, that you ask every guy, so Dad, if you jump on Jeff's podcast, expect this question, is what does it mean to be a great dad? So Jeff, what does it mean to be a great dad?
My answer always changes, to be honest. Lately, I think it means to father with intention. And what I mean by intention is like to be putting in the work on yourself that's required to be a better dad, right? As I talked about, like for me, that meant getting therapy. For others, it's like learning how to regulate your emotions. It's understanding and having the conversations with your co-parent around like what are misaligned expectations. You know, I haven't talked about this before, but I love this as a great example. So my wife, when she was a kid, she had very hippy-dippy parents, and she was never allowed sugar. So like only rarely could she have something sweet. Whereas my parents, I ate crap, like absolute crap, like, you know, Frosted Flakes cereal twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day as like my snacking food. And so when we started, you know, cooking for our children, all I wanted to do was give them healthy food. What did my wife want to do? She wanted to give them treats. And so we were like absolutely annoyed at each other, and we couldn't understand why we're so misaligned. And then it was about like understanding these childhood stories, right? Like this is what like I didn't like in my childhood that I want to do differently. And she had, this is what happened in my childhood that I didn't like and I want to do. And they were opposites. And just recognizing that created more space, right? And so like that's all part of being intentional. It goes all the way to like conversations with your co-parent. It goes to healing and working on yourself. It goes to asking questions. It goes to having the courage to be in a program to become a better dad. All of those things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes complete sense. Any regrets in your 8 years being a dad that you look back and think, gosh, I should have done that better?
I mean, there's a million things I wish I wish I had done better, but they've all been things that I've learned from. So like, cause it was about like I was horrible at regulating my emotions early on, but if I was still as horrible now, then it would be a regret. At this point, it's a blessing because I've gotten much better at it. And hey, that's why you have a second kid, so you can fix all those mistakes you had with the first one.
Yep. Then you have a third. It's all out the window.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
All right, Jeff. Last 2 questions. I think these are the most important. What Jeff can, or what is the single best thing a dad can do to kind of rise up, improve his capability as a father in, say, the next 6 months?
Best thing that they can do, it's just so many things. I don't know that I can think of a best, but I think it would, I mean, you could start by building a vision or a philosophy for how you want to parent, like, and being really detailed about it. Like, how do I want to respond when my child or children are completely dysregulated emotionally? How do I want to have the conversation around like what money means and what I want it to mean for them? How should I think about defining like success for my children and how I want them to think about it? There's so many different questions. So it's about building your fatherhood philosophy, I think.
Yeah. Mission and vision, so to speak. All right, last question for you, sir. I call this my diamond advice segment. I ask this of everybody who I have the honor of speaking to. So Jeff, thanks again for joining me today. So you got your boys, Rivington, Rimiel. They're great. They're growing up. You've taught them all these lessons, but now they're out of the house, Jeff, and they've forgotten absolutely everything that you have taught them, except for one piece of diamond advice. What's that one thing that you want your kids to take with them, Jeff, as they move on into their life?
Always ask for help. I think it's a superpower. And if you are good at asking for help, then like it doesn't matter how lost you are, like you'll always find a way.
It's been an honor to have you on, sir. Let's get
Thank
you back.
you so much. Yeah, this is great. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Jeff, you have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Ryan.